History with Jackson podcast.
So, hello and welcome to the History with Jackson podcast. You may be aware that I am not Jackson, and this is Jackson sat next to me here. But today we are just going to be doing a roundup of History of Jackson's highlights, successes, everything to do with 2023. But I am Abby, and I am a fellow history lover. I have been involved with Jackson in a historical sense for a very long time now. So I feel like this is a really great way to
Carry on working together.
carry on working together.
Because actually, you're going to be working with History of Jackson through
in 2024, which is
next
really
year.
exciting, actually, because this is a really nice way to start off 2024 knowing like how we're building on your successes from 2023. Which is
it's
exciting.
a great way to introduce you to everyone so everyone knows
Yeah.
who you are, can get used to your voice and
also
and
not
your
just
face.
a random face that's just popping up being like,
Who the hell's
hi.
that?
Yeah, so I'm Abby, if you wanted to know. But yeah, I guess we're going to kick off this kind of end of year roundup with a question that you like to ask all of your guests on every single podcast episode. It is, what was the inspiration behind History of Jackson? The brand, the inspiration. How did you get to the content where you are now?
I think History of Jackson's gone through a few different phases. So the first one was that I was finishing up my undergrad history degree and I wanted a way to stay involved with academia, a way to show myself as a historian. So I started doing the weekly videos and discussing history in that way, history that I was interested in, doing series and turning my academic work into video essays and so on. After training as a teacher, it kind of was in a little bit of a flux, like, am I presenting history? Am I still being a historian myself? And, over the past year, it's actually morphed into being a history platform. So my inspiration behind that is, I want to be involved in history. I want to be involved in creating history myself, presenting history. But also there's so many great historians out there who haven't got a platform or don't know how to utilize their own platform, who I want to work with to share their books. I mean, some of the books that we've got here are fantastic books who aren't shared as often as they should be. And I think that's part of the inspiration now of History of Jackson is that I want to share the work of historians who can't necessarily get the work out there, or publishers aren't getting necessarily get the work out there as much as they can, or it should be, and then just turning it into a platform for history lovers. So, with the blog that's just started up.
Yeah, exciting things on the horizon for 2024, guys. Check out the blog space.
And you're going to be writing on there as well.
I will be writing on there. Check out for me. Okay, so actually I really love that because I think that makes history a lot more accessible to everyone and not just this idea that you have to have a university education to be able to access history. And before we get into the nitty gritty of like your statistics for like of a roundup from the podcast, tell us, how do you decide who you interview on the podcast? How do you decide what books you are going to read and be like, hey, this is a great book, I want you to come and talk about it?
That's actually a great question because it's a difficult process. So I get pitched so many books by so many different publishers, which I love. Don't stop doing that, please.
I will be pitching him my book when it comes out in next year.
You've been successful. But I talk to loads of different publishers. I don't just have a relationship with one press or two presses. I talk to a plethora of publishers across the year, and I look through their catalogues, and I think, what are people going to be interested in listening to? What should people know about as well? But also what's going to fit with that current period? And what should you tackle and be more sensitive about at different times? For me as well, it's also my personal interest. And I don't hate it, but I find social history quite difficult to get into. And I'll do it, but sometimes I find it quite difficult. So something really needs to grab me on that. Hence, most of this is political, to be honest. But, it goes through that process of looking through the press's catalogue for the next season, saying, well, that's something I personally find interested in. I want to have a look at that. This is something that I think it's worth and its contribution should be amplified.
Yeah.
There's certainly been some narratives like Marsha Gessen's book here on Ursula Parrott. Ursula's life is incredibly fascinating, but she's been ignored for a long time.
Kind of like dimmed down in her light. I remember that podcast episode. It was a great podcast episode. But yeah, so what I'm hearing is if your book has political leaning, Jackson will probably love it. But
Most definitely.
but most definitely love it. But don't stop that from don't let that deter you from wanting to pitch your book to Jackson, because he has a wide-reaching sense of understanding for history, and that is something that I think comes through in all of your like political like understanding and also your historical understanding. So it's really cool to see your opinions
Yeah.
on a wide array of topics.
I mean, from that, I've gone from swimming,
Yeah.
the history of swimming, to looking at amateur diplomats negotiating with Hitler to help the British war effort, or to help efforts for a kind of friendship, a kinship with Germany before the war. So, from swimming to Hitler to the Templars, which was a social and a political and a military history as well.
Yeah.
It's such a breadth of topics that I look at. I'm not just going to take it if it's political or military.
Yeah, of course.
It's interesting, but social stuff is also interesting. It's just everyone has their own political, not political. Everyone does have political leanings,
Yeah.
but everyone has their own historical leanings.
Yeah, and also the way that we all interpret social history comes from like our own historical, political, social, economic background and the way we view the world. So it's really interesting to have this like wide breadth of topics from people who me and you would not have ever kind of come across in our like everyday walks of life. And I think that's such a cool thing about your podcast, is that you're kind of indiscriminately like saying like, hey, you've got something to contribute to the community. Yes, we'll have you on.
100%.
But speaking of your community, I have some questions, some rapid fire questions about your metrics across the platforms, because it would be amiss of us to round up the year's podcast kind of scene without asking these questions. So, how many episodes did you upload in 2023?
Oh, bloody hell. We went monthly till June, so that's, my math is pretty awful, but that's 6.
It's
I
a good
think.
job you did history,
Yeah.
not maths.
And then from June to December, we went weekly.
Yep.
So 1 a week from then. So,
Come on,
bloody
Jackson.
hell,
You can do it.
26.
26?
26 had 6, 32.
32 episodes in the year.
32 episodes
And
in
there
the
are
year.
52 weeks in the year.
And we're doing 52 in 2024.
We're doing
Plus 52. And
plus the
yeah, so,
festivals.
yeah, Gloucester was 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah.
So I did 30, 40 episodes.
Okay, so we'll aim at 40, which is a good amount. And do you know how many total plays you got, total listens across all streaming platforms?
Oh, no, I switched streaming platforms this year, so my
okay.
metrics are a bit messed up.
Okay.
But, it's...
So for 2024, we'll be paying
thousands.
attention to these metrics.
Yeah, thousands of people listened, which I'm very grateful for. I love talking,
Yep.
but to have thousands of people have listened to everything this year,
Yeah.
not just you listening to go to sleep.
Don't out me like that, okay? I listen
Obviously.
to Jackson's podcast to fall asleep, so he gets extra plays because I set a sleep timer. So it's like every 15 minutes I'll fall asleep, and then the next like day I'll go back because I only managed to listen to 3 minutes of it, and then
Obviously, I need to do ASMR. So, yeah, I think it's thousands of people listening. It's very humbling.
Yeah. And speaking of like thousands of people, which city and or country had the most listens from?
Weirdly, so I thought I'd be. You said these quick rapid fire.
Yeah.
It's America, United States of America. Americans account for 60% of my audience.
60.
60% of my audience, which
Wow,
is
it must be the British accent.
yeah, must be.
It must be the British accent.
Must be. Yeah, that's. But yeah, it's very 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 different.
Yeah. How many guests did you have on the podcast this year?
Oh wow.
This should not be a put on the spot question.
About 40.
About 40.
About
is
40, yeah.
Apart from the Gloucestershire ones. No, but they were guests as well.
They was all guests, yeah. So
were all
about 40
guests as
guests, which
That's a lot.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. A lot of books as well.
Yeah,
which is,
I don't know how you do that, because obviously obviously you went 1 episode a week. You're having to read and I know that a book a week for yourself is not an ambitious, but on top of writing your own book, studying, just having completed your masters, on top of holding down a job, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I was like, oh my god, I got to read 3 books this week, which was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that though. There's been a whole discourse on X or Twitter, or whatever we call it now, about someone going, "Oh, I read 300 books this year," and someone else going, "Oh, I read
Oh my god,
three."
do you want to know how many books I read this year?
Yeah. How many?
I read 157.
But yeah, you need to do a podcast.
They weren't historical books by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, some of them were.
But yeah, it's I'm not jealous.
Yes. I mean, because I've been traveling, I've like done very little apart from like read, which has been really nice this year. But speaking of like the year outside of like the History of Jackson podcast, but also with the History of Jackson podcast, you've had a great year. And I know I've mentioned that you've just like graduated your master's. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
What are some of the highlights of this year
Well,
for yourself
oh,
and the brand?
yeah, it's been. I'll start with the brand.
Yeah.
First of all, I mean, it's probably hard to distinguish myself from the brand nowadays. But
People want to know about you as a person as well.
But in terms of the brand, going to a weekly format was probably a highlight because it was something that I previously didn't really think I could do, and demonstrating that I could do it
Yeah.
was a high point. I really, really enjoyed doing it and talking to all these fantastic. This is just a small subsection of some of the historians I've spoken to, and being invited to festivals and getting festivals booked for 2024. It's one of those things where, as you start, and I've started taking it properly seriously since June, July. Once you've started taking it seriously, but people are taking you seriously,
Of course.
and actually wanting you to be places, inviting you to go places, and people recognising you and
Oh
knowing
yeah,
you when
you've
you're in these
definitely built
things.
up a reputation and a bit of notoriety in the community, I would say.
It's that I think that's probably the
Highlight.
brand
Yeah.
professional high point. Personally, finishing and graduating masters was a big thing.
Of course.
Always wanted to. I want to be an academic. I want to be a professor, and finishing that part of the journey to get there was a particular high point. Standing there in the hall with everyone else who was on my cohort was a fantastic experience. After I wrote my dissertation based because I've worked from the end of the semester to the end of the school term because I'm a supply teacher as well alongside this. This is not a full-time job. All right, everyone else thinks it is.
He wants it to be, though.
Yeah,
He wants it to be a full-time job.
So I wrote my whole dissertation alongside some of the articles I wrote for History of War and all about history. I wrote my whole dissertation from the end of July to the end of August. In like a whole month, I wrote.
Wow, that's pretty quick for your master's, dis.
Yeah. So I was knackered.
Of course you were.
But yeah, that's a high point. Finishing my dissertation and graduating.
Is there any plans for a PhD on the horizon in the next couple of years?
Currently looking into doing this.
Oh my god,
so
exciting.
Hopefully
Oh my
we
god,
hear back from them.
exciting. It won't just be Master Jackson, it will be Dr. Jackson in the near future. Despite the fact that you couldn't save my life if you tried. But, so, the kind of main point of your podcast, as we have already touched upon, is having all of these incredible guests and giving them a spotlight and giving them a platform to, kind of like discuss their work. Can you give us a bit of your highlights of the people that you've had on your podcast?
Oh,
And that's going to be really difficult to do.
there's quite a lot, and I don't want to disappoint anyone by not mentioning them. But
Yeah, of course.
personal points for me. I'm great friends with Steve Tibble now, so it's great to talk with Steve outside the podcast, discuss work with Steve. Talking to Steve about the Templars was a great episode to talk to him about his book, going to his book launch as well in September.
Oh my gosh, that's very exciting.
First book launch I've ever gone to, which was awesome.
So you're getting ideas for your book launch?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Nice.
So that was a great thing to go and visit. Steve's coming on again in 2024 for 2 books.
Oh my gosh, he is quick moving if he's got 2 books coming onto the podcast.
Oh, he's just a lovely, lovely man. I can't wait to talk to him about
Yeah,
it.
of course. Any teasing of what he's going to be talking about?
Oh, no, I can't possibly.
You can't possibly.
You're
You
going to have to
couldn't
wait
do
and
that
find
to him.
Talking to Charles about his book as well. I love totalitarianism. I love, this is so morbid, looking at Hitler and Stalin's regimes and being able to look at Hitler from a different perspective was really, personally, for my academic kind of intrigue, a really interesting
I was going to say,
thing to do.
Jackson has his book here, which his first book is right at the bottom. And if you don't know about this, about Jackson, he has published, I believe self-published this book.
Yeah.
Looking at totalitarianism and the regimes and the similarities between was about to say Hitler, Stalin. Mussolini's in there as well, I believe.
Yes, there's a little bit of Mussolini in there, yeah.
Not your main focus, and it's an incredibly worthwhile read. If I could get my consonants out. So yeah, you're uniquely positioned to be able to not only politically comment on like a lot of Charles's work, but also actually have your understanding kind of like challenged, not in like a critical way, but in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I enjoy most is whilst I learn a tremendous amount about all these different books and these different periods. I started off as a medievalist and learning so I can get by on most topics. But when I start looking at Hitler, Stalin, Mao, as I did with Charles, being able to actually think, okay, does this relate to this? And does this relate to this?
And how does it link to modern world understanding of this? It's very fun.
Yeah, it makes it those are the ones I live for, really, from a personal academic desire to contribute a little bit more. I love them.
Yeah, that's so great. Okay, so we all know that you love totalitarianism, and you have just said that you originally started as a medievalist. So outside of the political kind of books that you've discussed on your podcast, what's your favorite topic that you've discussed? Or just episode?
Do you know what? I am starting. It's so bloody confusing when you start getting into it, but I'm starting to really love ancient Roman history.
Okay.
I've spoken. Jesus, what's going on today? Long day. I have spoken to Dr. Simon Elliott several times on the podcast about his work. I've reviewed several ancient Roman books. We had Emma Southern on to talk about her book on ancient Rome. It's something that I'm starting to get really interested in and starting to learn more about.
Yeah.
So it's those topics which they're so far removed from. Well, not so far, but I'm not going to dive into the whole iconography kind of part of them. But they're so far removed from these totalitarian regimes of Stalin, Hitler, and Mao, but also wildly different from the 1400s, the medieval period that I love. So looking at those regimes has been something that I've really enjoyed this year.
I was going to say, so similarly, I joined kind of like history with my undergraduate, kind of being a very modernist, coming at it from like a loving...
Massive modernist.
Massive modernist, wouldn't touch medieval history, my life depended on it, wouldn't do it. And then slowly, under the tutorship of some incredible lecturers at uni, really investigating Byzantine and Roman history and how they intersect with one another, but from different medieval empires, looking in on them. And I think that is so interesting because we have a lot of Roman centric history, and it's very popular to the whole TikTok trend is
the Roman
what's
Empire,
your Rome, that type of stuff. It's so fun being able to see it from a different perspective. And I think because Rome has been so it's been discussed a lot, people are having to come up with some really clever ways to discuss it, and it's so interesting seeing what's coming out now.
But I think you make a great point there about wanting to decentralize narratives. That's something that I've been, I quite clearly am a white man, and decentralizing these narratives away from whiteness, maleness, Rome-centric, Eurocentric. It's been something maybe American-centric as well, Western-centric, trying to decentralize a lot of the episodes that I do away from these. And it's hard sometimes to do that, but trying to do it, making a conscious effort for it throughout the year has been something that I've personally challenged myself to do this year.
Yeah, that's a really hard thing to do, especially because history is written by the victors, and essentially a lot, especially with Western history, it is normally white men.
Yeah, and looking at Emma's book, looking at Rome through women. Nicholas Morton's book, which is not in this stack, sadly, about the Mongol storm, looking at the Mongol Empire and that area, the Crusader state area, but through a Islamic Mongol lens.
Yeah, and not the Christian one that we are so used to.
Yeah, which is so fascinating when, later on I look at a couple of episodes down the line from Nick's episode, I discussed with Steve Tibble the Templars in that region.
Yeah.
So looking at that from both sides was fascinating, decentralising it to be a non-Eurocentric, a non-Christio-centric narrative has been something that I've really relished this year.
Do you think we'll see more of that coming into 2024?
100%. I think there's been a lot of there's a lot of things that I'm booking up, which are me trying to move away from these narratives to try and bring more things in that help people learn from a different perspective. But also there's some more of the traditional stuff in there as well, because you can't get enough of some of them as well.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the traditional stuff is a really nice access point for a lot of people because they already kind of understand what's going on. So it's not so much of a culture shock coming into the academic world where it's like you're referencing all these crazy historians and you're like, this isn't now talking about history, it's talking about the historians who think they wrote history in a certain type of way.
And that's the difficult part that I find with some of this academic history is you open the first page of the first page of an academic journal, and you're like, what the hell's going on there?
Yeah.
Like, there's 50 million references, I don't understand any of the words. But by trying to make History of Jackson, which is the home of accessible and digestible history, more accessible, more digestible, that these types of histories are more accessible. You know, Christopher Harrison's book, about genocidal wastage, quite a heavy topic.
Of course.
Quite an academic topic. But by discussing the way that me and Chris did, it made it more accessible, I hope.
And also, it gives people a starting point to be like, okay, this was too heavy for me, but I enjoyed, there was a certain point of what was discussed, and I'm going to go away and research that myself. And it's a really great way of getting into things, like asking questions, being like, oh, I really enjoyed this specific point. Yeah. How can I expand my knowledge on that?
I think that's why I always ask historians at the end of the episode, you know, how can people go away and get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Because I, don't have the answers. I can't tell you everything about Ursula Parrott. I can't tell you everything about genocidal wastage. But if I give you a way to access these historians, who, by the way, are incredibly accessible,
and very active on social media.
100%. They can go and talk to them and say, hi, Chris, how do you make this point in genocidal wastage, and how can I learn more about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
All incredible points, like incredible points. But trying to bring it back more to your highlights of this year. What has been a standout episode for you? You've already mentioned so many incredible historians that you've interviewed and had discourse with.
No, I'm a big karaoke fan.
Yeah, literally. What's been a standout episode for you? Whether it's been because of the guest or because of an episode you like to produce.
I think I can't get away from the one with Logan.
Very, very sweet episode.
To talk with my little brother who has special needs on the podcast, and him to ask really lovely questions about the work that I do.
Being so genuinely interested in what you do as well.
Because you know him. You've known him for nearly 19 years. Logan's very rarely shown interest in what I do. And it's just a brother thing.
Yeah.
But to come onto the podcast and ask such lovely questions and be able to show an element of my life that I don't show an awful lot on social media was one of my favourite episodes that I've ever done.
To hear that, because it isn't often that we actually do get to share not only our academic interests with people, because when I talk about history, a lot of my family shut off, which is completely fine. But actually, I do prowl on about it, so that's my own fault.
Mine shut off as well. That's why I have a podcast.
Because you actually get to discuss it with people who actually want to listen.
Yeah.
But actually, talking about your work with your younger siblings, I think that's really, really, really lovely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's only one of my brothers.
Yeah, you have many brothers.
Yeah, one of them probably wouldn't do that, and the other one probably would actually. So
I'm trying to work out who would and who wouldn't. I think I have my guesses, but I'm not going to broadcast that. So you mentioned earlier that I'm already anticipating that I'm going to be on the podcast more, that you were at Gloucestershire Festival, and that you are planning on being at Gloucestershire in this coming year.
Yes.
What has been your highlight from Gloucestershire Festival 2023?
Now, Gloucester History Festival is an awesome history festival, and we were only there for a day.
Yeah.
A day. And I put out Matt, Nicola, and we also spoke to Ian Dale. putting out 3 episodes, I think I put 3 or 4 episodes out that day,
Yeah,
was a lot of work.
I can imagine.
But being able to meet people, Matt Lewis, I know Matt, I'm friends with Matt. Being able to talk with Matt and see Matt again was great. But also, Ian Dale was lovely.
Yeah.
Apparently there wasn't time for me to talk to Ian. But when I went to go and see Ian in the press room and say, hi, like, hi Ian, I'm Jackson. Would you mind coming on the podcast just to have a little talk about your book? That man gave me 8 minutes, which he didn't have to give me.
Yeah.
And that was probably my highlight there is, whilst I met Nathan Amin, who's a lovely, lovely man, Nicola, who's everyone there was lovely. I can't stress that enough. But to have that moment where, I'm not little, but little old me with my small podcast talking to someone who is, works for LBC and has just written a book with some fantastic historians, some of which I'm friends with. And he came on and gave that time up when he didn't have to, when he was about to go on stage with Gavin Ishla was a highlight for me, actually, because it just showed that everyone wants to help everyone else out if they've got the time. And it was really nice.
I think that's a really nice thing that I've noticed in the history community. There's kind of this shift from, I want to say gatekeeping, but I feel like it's a bit of like a 2023 word for it.
It is 2023.
It's 2023 in a nutshell. But yeah, instead of like being this kind of like pompous community that is very much like, if you don't have access to this, you're not going to have access to this, to actually being a very wholesome community that is actually like, oh no, we're going to give each other a leg up. I think that's a really, really nice shift to see and like watch it happen in real time.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a difference. When you talk to some of these people and you find out how they get into it, they got into it the same way that we did. They were trying to get into it, and now they're helping other people. And within this community, this episode goes out 3 years anniversary of History of Jackson. Within those 3 years, I've had people offer me opportunities, people ask me to do things, people help me out. And across those 3 years, whilst I'm nowhere near Dan Jones, Dan Snow, whatever, I'm still trying to help out younger historians, people who aren't established, because it's the right thing to do.
Jackson has helped me out on numerous occasions with my own historical exploits and endeavours, so I can definitely speak to that. And hopefully you will, if you decide that you want to put a book out there, you've already got a book out there, you want to write for Jackson, he will also support you through that.
www.historyjackson.co.uk. It's all on there.
It's not a shameless plug at all. No, this is a wholesome roundup. Okay, so speaking of the fact that you had to put out a numerous amount of content from the Gloucestershire History Festival, but also networking and meeting these incredible historians and building that community that you want to see, how do you balance an entertaining podcast, creating the interviews, and actually like retaining historical accuracy and also like kind of just accuracy in all your statements, with that kind of needing to engage people and kind of draw people in? Because like at the end of the day, like you want people to listen.
Yeah, well, that's probably one of the
hardest questions
I've ever been asked.
It's difficult, huh?
Yeah.
It's not my job if I don't make you squirm.
Yeah, I'm never on the other side of this mic. I think I do a lot of research.
Yeah.
I do an awful lot of research into the episodes that I do the presses that I work with.
Yeah, of course.
And the people I work with. And if I cannot be certain or sure of, other people not doing their due diligence, then it's probably not right for me.
Yeah, of course.
And it's probably not right or fair for the audience. Because I'm also a teacher, I'm very conscious of creating misconceptions. And misconceptions are difficult to undo, and they can be dangerous. Vikings didn't have horns on their helmet. One example. And we can't undo those misconceptions once they set in. So I don't have the time to sit down through a book and fact check it.
Yeah.
So I need to trust that the press that I work with, the editor that author had, did that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just relying on other people for due diligence. But the presses that I work with, some of the marketing people I work with, some of the editors I work with are actually all of them are fantastic. They know what I'm looking for. They know who I want, and more often than not, they recommend people for me to work with.
And also, like, knowing you the way I do, you're not going to be working with people or even entertaining the idea of working with people who aren't doing their due diligence already.
No, and I don't think it's fair on them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair on the audience either. I'm fairly rigorous in the way that I create questions as well. And yeah, if I think for a second that something is not to the level that I think it should be for people to consume, then it will show throughout the whole process.
That's a great answer. It's a great answer, and it's also really great to hear you take that like pride in your work, because obviously it's got your name on it and you don't want to be putting out
Front and center.
Yeah, front and center. History with Jackson. You don't want to be putting out content that is going to reflect badly on yourself, but also make the guests that you have on your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately I'm trying to show every historian that I talk to in the best light. I send my questions to historians beforehand, and I say, look, these are the questions. Send the questions to them, and they say, look, is there anything here that you don't feel comfortable answering? If I want this to be the best way of showing you in a light, let me know what you want to have. And it comes down to that. If someone can't be shown off in the best possible way, it's working with them to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's great. But it sounds like a lot of work.
100%.
A lot of work. So how do you keep up to date with your own historical research on top of all of the research you do for the podcast?
Not very well. I have no life. So
Sure you do.
think of me if you wish. So I essentially work 2 full-time jobs with this. So I'm a teacher in the day. I come back from school. I'll have a cup of tea, maybe 2. I have a massive caffeine dependency, because I've learned from James Hoffman it's not a caffeine addiction. It's dependency.
A dependency. That makes it so much worse. That makes it so much worse.
Massive caffeine dependency. Basically all hours of the day.
Yeah.
I'm working. I go to the gym every day. The stair climber is...
Do you read your books while you're walking the stairs?
Actually, a stair climber is my time to answer any messages or emails. So I do my emails and my messages on the stair climber.
So clever.
I know I am.
Of course you do.
And then, any other time. So when I come back, it's emails and answering questions, reading the books, creating the questions. It's just all consuming, but I wouldn't change it for the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
I do make sure I have personal time as well.
Of course. Personal time is golden. Okay, so speaking to that, you obviously have like strategies in place on how you kind of like manage the day-to-day admin, but do you have any strategies in place for how you're going to be running the podcast in 2024? Are there going to be any changes to run schedule or the way you're editing it?
So I am trying to get as much done as early as possible. So bar this episode, December was recorded in November.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get ahead. I am halfway through January at the moment.
That's pretty good going.
So I'm trying to make it a little bit easier, so that when I go on holiday, when we go to these festivals and stuff, as a team.
That's something new that's coming 2024.
There is now a team. I'm not frantically trying to record the episode for that Sunday on Friday night. So it's putting those processes in place so I feel more comfortable, so that I can just let the content go out and let everything else flow as it should.
And Sundays are still your upload day?
Yes, Sundays are staying as my upload day. I don't know why I chose Sunday.
I think it's a good day.
It's
a good day.
Just Sunday.
It's a good way to round out the week.
No, it was 3 years ago. Was that Sunday? 1st of January was maybe a Sunday. I don't know. It's always been a Sunday.
Fair, and that's not even changed, even from when you like shifted from how much content you put out a month a week.
Yeah, and when it went from month, it was every 15th. But then,
okay,
before when it was weekly videos, it was a Sunday. So yeah,
fair, keeping it consistent.
Consistency.
I like it.
I might try and build season breaks in, just so I can have a week.
Just a week to rest and recuperate from all of the editing.
You know I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no, no, you're not. So obviously a lot of work goes into creating your podcast or your content, making it as high quality as possible. What is something that you secretly hate about recording and producing your podcast?
Oh,
Maybe hate's a strong word.
social media.
Social media?
Social media.
What about it? It's broad.
I love reading the books. I love writing the questions. I love talking to the historians. Oddly, I enjoy editing. I really quite,
I
yeah.
expected editing to be the thing you hated the most.
No, I actually love sitting there in front of GarageBand and going,
GarageBand.
getting rid of ums and everything, and my propensity to repeat the same word twice in my rebuttal to historians. But social media, I hate it. I used to have, before I started taking this seriously, I actually used to have screen times on my phone
Yeah.
for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I should have one for TikTok. But
TikTok was an endless pit.
yep,
I don't have it on my phone for exactly that reason. I don't have any social media on my phone for exactly that reason.
It's So I don't enjoy doing social media, and it has forced me into becoming an addict again because I have to see what everyone else is doing, to see what I can do,
And keep up with the community and keep up with trends
Yeah.
and to keep posting. Maybe something for 2024 would be hiring a social media content.
Oh, that'd be
Manager.
lovely. That'd be lovely.
I'm not
but-
offering, by the
Oh,
way.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was you offering.
Nope.
Yeah.
I think I dislike social media as much as you do in terms of creating content for
Oh,
it.
it's one of the hardest jobs.
It is. But that being said, you have degrees in both politics and history, and you're saying that social media is the hardest thing that
I
you've
don't
done.
have a degree in social media.
No, I didn't say you did. I didn't say you did. I'm just saying that it's funny that I expected it to be something along the lines of like the editing side of it, but it's actually the social media that.
I'm a massive audiophile. Like I love, and I think that's probably something that people notice when they listen to the podcast. I like to make sure that the audio is the highest quality possible. I like to make sure that I know my voice picks up very well on microphones. That's not me being. It just
No,
naturally
it just
does.
Yeah.
But I always like to make sure that the audio is the best quality and my guest voice sound the best and as accurate as possible. So I enjoy doing that. That's something I really nerd out. I could spend £1,000 on audio setup just now. But it's if I got £2,000 tomorrow for History of Jackson, I'd probably spend it on someone to do my social media.
Okay. I mean, that enters another possibility. If you had unlimited funds, what would you implement?
Someone's doing my social media.
Social media?
Someone's doing my social media. Someone's doing my social media. And maybe the editing. But yes, 100% someone's doing social media.
Nice. Same. Okay, so I'm now going to ask you some forward-thinking questions
Alright.
to 2024 because, we'll finish the year with the high that you are obviously on. Like, History of Jackson has become very successful in the last year. What are you looking forward to the most about 2024?
I think past 3 years, I've been working very independently.
Yeah.
A lot of my articles have just been me doing them. Episodes of whilst I work with historians, I'm planning, I'm writing, I'm reading, and to start working with friends such as yourself as a team to go to things
Yeah.
is something I'm really, really excited for. As someone who actually is quite a sociable person at times, to work so independently has made me not such a sociable person.
Yeah.
And to be able to go to these things that I enjoy doing with people who I like is
Opposed to people you don't like.
yeah, not that I've ever gone to anything with people I don't like. Is just something I'm really looking forward to doing.
Yeah, and also sharing that kind of passion with it, right? Like, kind of being able to nerd out on it and being like, "Oh, I'm not boring you."
Yeah, and that's the big thing is, when you go to these things, people who aren't interested in history are like, okay, what's the problem? Like, why? But when you go to people who enjoy it, like yourself, you enjoy history, you're going to come in at a different perspective than I, and you will probably force me to do things because people are going to want to listen to it and want to watch it, and it's that perspective and that change that will really, I think I'm really looking forward to doing this year.
Oh, and I'm excited for this year as well. Like, I'm excited for seeing History of Jackson like kind of grow, but also kind of having like the behind the scenes kind of like take on it.
Behind the scenes is mad.
Behind the scenes, is there any like anecdotes or like stories from behind the scenes that you can share?
The amount of times that I have frantically had to read 200 pages in a night. Now, I roughly read 60 pages an hour.
Okay, so a page a minute.
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
you're
roughly
saying?
about a page a minute. Roughly about. Sometimes it's more, sometimes
That
less.
is very quick.
Well, it's a skill set I've had to develop.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah.
roughly about a page a minute. But there's been times where I've planned for a certain day, and then I've had the email, and I've gone, oh dear,
Yep.
I need to read this book now,
Yeah.
and I've had to stay there at night and read 200 pages. It's too many times. It is too many times. But most of it is me frantically reading books.
Okay. So, what would you say the one thing you'd want to change? Would you say that it's for the coming year would be not having to read frantically 200 pages at midnight?
I'm still going to do that.
Yeah, nothing's changing.
I'm still
here.
going to do that. But try and get it done
Yeah.
earlier. But I have got quite a few books upstairs, so that's going to be lovely.
But that's exciting that
Yeah.
you've already got them like ready and ready to go. Which, speaking of, is there anyone who you've not already mentioned that you're excited to come on the podcast in the next coming year?
Well, someone's book is being published this year.
Someone's.
Yeah, someone's book is being published this year. I'm very excited to talk to you about your book because me and you have been friends for so long.
Yeah.
Too long.
Too long.
But to talk to you about something that you're knowledgeable and passionate about is something that I'm really looking forward to doing. Because, I like Russian history. I like Ukrainian history, but mine is more modern
Yeah.
in my sense. Meanwhile, the book you're approaching isn't.
No, not at all. I shan't speak to my book too much because obviously this is a history
Well,
of
it's a
Jackson
book you can't talk
roundup.
to it.
Pardon?
It's a book you can't talk to
Oh,
it.
shut up. But yeah, no, my book is looking to Olga of Kiev, Saint Olga of Kiev, the first regent queen of the Rus, which is the precursor state to the modern Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. And I think the one thing that I enjoy the fact that we can discuss about is a lot of like the modern geopolitical historical context. You can see its ties down to even like the history
Oh, 100%.
from like the time period that I'm looking at, which is very easy, the 900s to like the 10th, the 11th century. So like it's really cool to be able to see this like not pattern of history, but being able to like see all like the different weaving of like time and context and cultural and like religious and socio kind of context, which feeds into our current day understanding.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Putin. I've already talked about Putin before, so people are no strangers to my views on him. But seeing him utilise rhetoric which directly references elements of Olga's time
Yeah,
is actually quite interesting.
it's very interesting. But more on that sometime in 2024. Can't tell you the exact date yet because
She needs to write it.
needs to write it. Which will be happening this year. So obviously we're coming into the new year and we're looking to the new year and we're reflecting on the past. Is there something that you would tell like your future you, like you in a year?
Future me. I don't think I have enough time. I very rarely do it. I think in the last month, because I've had the time to stop and be a little bit more introspective,
Yeah.
actually stop and enjoy it
Okay.
for a time. There was a time where I was just pushing out content, just pushing it out, reading books, pushing it. Just particularly July and August, just creating mad amount of content. But actually stop and enjoy what I'm doing because I do love
There's
it.
a reason you got into this, right? There's
Yeah.
a love for it. There has to be.
So I think that's it. Just enjoy it when I'm doing it because
Okay.
there's so many great historians that I'm making friends with and so many great books that I've been given that are great reads, and I very rarely get the chance to kind of stop and go, actually,
I could read all of his work
yeah,
and just binge it.
I'll read that again. Actually, I never read a book again because I've not got the time.
Clearly.
But yeah, I think stop and enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay. And speaking of like enjoying it, what has been the best thing that you've enjoyed about having the podcast this year?
Oh.
if you could take the time to actually reflect upon it.
Talking to people.
Yeah?
Talking to people. And meeting those people in some parts. Because not often do I get to meet my guests. Not
Yeah.
often do I actually get to physically see them in person. But not often am I able to have the conversations I have with people in the way that I do on the podcast, in everyday life. There's no way I will sit down with someone in a pub or in a coffee shop and talk about genocide or wastage.
Yeah.
It's just not it's not a topic.
Can you imagine if someone overheard specific parts of what you were discussing
Oh,
and
yeah, I
took
mean-
it out of context?
I've got a sticky tabbed mind camp, just for my research. It's sticky tabbed. I get looks just for carrying it around. So
Yeah.
being able to talk to people who understand that is just great.
Yeah. Okay, that's wonderful.
Don't put me on a watch list, please.
Don't put Jackson on the watch list. Okay, so we've obviously reflected on the good. What is something that you have learnt, the biggest thing that you've learnt this year? Good or bad?
That I can ask for help. I don't like asking for help. I like doing things on my own.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing it, and I am kind of a person who likes to run things.
You're a perfectionist.
Yeah, I am a perfectionist, and I like to be in charge, and I like to make sure I get things done. And if someone's not doing it the way that I want it done, I just think, sod it, I'll do it myself. But actually asking for help and accepting that something's not going to be perfect is something that I've had to learn this year, and I should probably carry on learning.
Definitely carry on learning, because I do think that sometimes the ability to trust other people to do the work that you want to do is an invaluable skill, but oh my god, the self-control to let go is difficult.
Yeah. I think I've struggled with that at points this year.
Okay.
With having to ask for help in certain situations when I'm like buried in work and I'm having to write articles and stuff. So yeah, carry on that vein.
Yeah.
Would be a good one for me.
It's a really good thing to carry forward in 2024. This next question is a little bit in the same vein of kind of what we've also already talked about, but I think
Okay.
it's a nice one to kind of like end off the year and end off like a look at your year, because obviously having looked at social media, you have to be on social media if
Yeah.
you're promoting this podcast, because it's kind of
You've
like
got to be there. Yeah.
the tools of the trade, right? Are there any historical content creators or just content creators in general that have inspired you throughout this year, or who will be inspiring you moving forward?
No, I love Dan Snow.
Yep.
I love Dan Snow's podcast. I love his interview technique. I like the way Dan does things. And I like the way History Hit is organised as a business, as a platform. So I think the way that Dan Snow does it
Yeah.
is something that really inspires me. And also, I'm not just a historian. You know, I also, played rugby for 10, 15 years. So there's
Longer? What, since 2013? Oh no, that's 10 years.
Yeah, 10, 15 years. I'm 25 now, so 15 years, literally 15 years.
Literally 15 years.
Played rugby for 15 years, and there's a lot of the way that retired rugby content creators like James Haskell and so on are trying to put across their personality. It's something I'm trying to do a little bit more this year. So taking inspiration from different genres and trying to add that in.
Yeah,
is
because
something
people want to know who you are as well. Like that's kind of like the fun of like podcasts, right? You have this incredible like the content you're here for, and then like across the episode you kind of get a sprinkling of the person that is hosting it.
Yeah, and I don't think I've done that enough this year. So
Okay.
2024, I'm gonna try and add a little bit more of that in.
Okay, cool. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm gonna be absolutely like
You can be shattered.
pulling that out of you, because Jackson does have a personality. Sometimes it just takes him a little bit to get there.
Wow.
I say that with most love and respect. Love and respect. But yeah, okay. So I have a final fun question for you.
Okay.
If you could This is a really generic fun question, but I'm gonna like expand on it. If you could drop into any period of history that wasn't modern,
Oh.
where would you drop?
1453. 1453. Yes, 1453, Battle of Towton.
Okay.
Wars of Roses. Edward IV versus Henry VI. I just want to see that battle. I think
Okay.
I think that's one of the most gruesome battles, the bloodiest battle ever happened on English soil.
Okay.
I want to see that.
You want to see it?
I want to see it.
But binoculars, front row seat.
Maybe take a drone. But
Okay. What would you bring back from 1453 Battle of Towton?
a picture, maybe a video of, and different concept now. War crime is a modern concept, but
Okay, where are we going with this?
the bottom of the stream at Towton, apparently, allegedly, the
Allegedly.
stream ran red with blood.
Ooh.
And I'd like to see, actually, this is what happened there.
Okay, but that's from like having modern technology. Like,
I'll take a sword. I want a sword.
okay.
Sword. Easy. Done.
Okay, but like something from like of actual historical kind of like value. And I'm
Historic
not
value.
saying a sword doesn't have value. I'm just saying like if you could like take anything, like whether it be like a scroll or I don't know, a scroll. I don't know why I went with that.
Yeah, I think this is quite
Some sort-
difficult
some
because
sort
I'm not
of
a
book.
material,
Yeah.
not a material scholar. Maybe a sword. It's just got to be a
Just a
sword.
sword.
It's just got to be a sword. I want a sword.
I think I would take the crown jewels.
See, that's pretty. Yeah. Which ones though? Before John lost them, or new
Yeah,
ones?
because
Okay,
like
so the original ones.
Because, like, right, so obviously we have, like, the crown jewels that we have at the moment, right? But, like, I think that's the same for all things lost. I think if I could go back in time and, like, just look at it.
Before
even-
John dropped them in the fans.
But even, like, Library of Alexandria, right? Like,
Yeah. Okay.
just
Great
being
answer.
just being able to, like, see it. Or, like, the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. Like, I would love to have seen that when it was Constantinople.
I think they're
and
good
it was,
answers,
like-
but you can't take that.
But I can't take it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I would love to be able to drop in and, like, take a book and just be like, hee hee, I was here. Cheeky, but yeah.
I think your answer's better than mine.
Yeah, a
I'm boring.
sword.
Just
A
a sword.
photo.
Such a man.
Drone footage
Sword.
from the river running
Running red. I
Running
mean,
red.
it just shows the difference in our historical interests.
It does. But I think unless there's any other questions.
Well, actually, how can people find you, Abby,
Oh, okay.
and interact with you online? So, obviously, people will listen to you, be a fantastic host. So, thank you very much for coming to do that.
Oh, thank you. So Jackson was the first person that I did a podcast with, and this is the first time that I'm hosting a podcast. Total of 2 times podcasting. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty good doing that, actually.
hope it's doing okay.
But obviously, people are going to want to interact with you. You got a book coming out. You need to promote it, which Abby
Will
doesn't
be-
want to do.
I know it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just
Can't
as
be
we've
bothered.
discussed, I'm wildly uncomfortable promoting my own work on social media.
I'm not. I'm shameless. That was a joke. I am not shameless. There are some things I won't do.
Only
But
some.
yeah, only some. But but how can people find you and interact with you online?
So we've got my Instagram account at Abigail R. Williams History on Instagram. I'm not on Twitter, X, what it is at the moment. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Abigail Williams. Abigail Rebecca Williams, if you want to know my middle name. But yeah, Instagram is the main place that I hang out. We'll be posting more frequently as I'm like working more with Jackson, and also promoting my book more. So yeah, and I think the most obvious place that you'll find me is here at History with Jackson.
Because she's going to be writing, she's going to be appearing with content. We've got some great things that we're going to do together this
Yeah,
year. So
some
I'm looking
festivals
forward to
coming up, which I'm excited for.
it. I'm super buzzing. I'm going to drink
Same.
so much coffee.
I don't drink coffee, so this is gonna be fun.
Well, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you guys coming back to this roundup that we do every year. And thank you very much, Abby, for interviewing me.
Well, I hope you've had a great year and many good wishes for the one coming.
Thank you. All right.
See you later, guys.
And thank you very much for listening to the first episode of History of Jackson in 2024. Now, that was a great roundup interview hosted by Abby. I really enjoyed recapping everything that I did in 2024 for the business, but also personally as well. Now, if you want to go and follow Abby on social media, her links are in the description below. And if you want to engage with more of the content that we create here at History of Jackson, please do consider supporting us at History of Jackson Plus on Apple Podcasts or by the Buy Me a Coffee profile in the description below. In the meantime, anything that you need, the blog, the podcast, all the links are also down below. And we will look forward to a great 2024 with you.